We are live. I'm going to copy the link. For them to be able to hear anything or see anything, you're going to need to do some talking. So how about I suggest you start with your early influences in magic and how you got started in magic while I post this link. And that way, when they click on, they'll click into your story.
Sounds good. So if we're going now, I can
yeah.
talk about my
start now.
The magic influence for me started with the old magic shop that was in Disney World at the Magic Kingdom. It was a trip to that. I can remember the things I bought too. They had cardboard Uma tubes, and then I had what else? I had a like a phantom tube. Everything was made out of cardboard, and then I had the rising wand. Those were my three things I bought at Disney World, and I almost took my eye out with the rising wand, trying to see what was inside of it. Cut my cornea open, and then whenever my folks would go on trips, they would buy magic tricks at the local magic shop wherever they went, and they'd bring me back something new each time. So they'd bring me back, you know, a single trick here and there. And then I continued to do magic to make friends. So I hope this is working now. I hope that there are still some folks joining us.
Okay. Let me have a look here. What I need to do is, okay, I'm looking at the notifications. I'm trying to look. And, okay, what advice? I've got a live question, so we've still got people.
Okay.
Okay, we've got it on YouTube link just above. They're hearing me because I'm trying to find the question. And I've just had Michael talk about his earlier childhood, and as soon as I can find.
Hello?
Oh, I've got it.
Are we? No, you're cutting out now.
Am I really? Just as I found the question thread. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can barely hear you. You keep cutting out, Laura.
You sound great to me.
Okay.
I'm in the middle of a massive storm in Texas right now.
How are you? Yeah, they're everywhere right now.
The fact that we're even speaking is a miracle.
Okay.
I have no cable and my lights are flickering. So
we're lucky that you have power.
Yeah, we have power, and I have battery on my laptop should we need it.
Okay.
You can hear me, right?
I can hear you now. Yep.
Okay, I might come in and out a little bit because of our storm, but you're loud and clear. The next question, or the most voted on question out of the whole 25 questions, is what was your biggest blunder on stage, and how did you recover?
All right. So I apologize to those of you if you tuned into this story earlier, but I'll just tell it again from the beginning. When I was a teenager, I used to think that I was going to be an illusionist. And so I had a mismade lady illusion. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, some of you close-up guys that don't know, that's where you put a girl in a box and you cut her body into 4 different pieces and then rearrange the pieces and open the doors so that when you open the doors, her legs are up here and her head's down here and so on. And the particular assistant that I was using for this one show, we'll just say that she wasn't with it that night due to whatever circumstances aren't important. And at the point where she was supposed to be at a certain spot inside that box, she wasn't. So when I pushed the blade into the box, I hit her in the back of the head.
Ouch.
Yeah. Yeah. And I knew immediately. And I knew something was wrong, and I knew it wasn't going to work right, because when I took the boxes apart and restacked them, she wasn't where she was supposed to be. So when I opened the door and her body was supposed to be here and her head was supposed to be here, nothing was anywhere. Nothing had been done. She didn't do the work on the inside of the box.
Oh,
It was supposed to
no.
be done. And so what the audience saw was me opening each door, looking in, seeing nothing, but they couldn't see that. And then I would look at them and go, as if, uh, as if the body part was there.
There.
And so it was awful. It was a bad experience, and it was just one of the many clues that I shouldn't be doing large-scale illusions, I guess.
Ah.
So comedy magic has treated me much better.
Oh, there you go. Um, and the audience, how did you recover from that? Did you just go on to the next
Yeah, I
illusion?
mean that was the last part of the show, and so I would say the recovery was me trying to cover by pantomiming feigning the surprise that I looked in each box. Um, yeah, the great thing about doing a comedy show is that
You can
no
make
one
it
knows. Yeah,
ridiculous.
no one knows when a mistake is a planned mistake or not. So, and especially in a show like mine where so much of the show is me failing, no one really knows what are the true fails and what are the fake fails. So it always sort of works out. And I've had things that haven't gone right in my show. Um, but if you make a mistake on stage, my advice would be to drive through your mistake, and they don't know what was supposed to happen. So everything can be played off like a purposeful mistake if you have the confidence to sell it as such and to completely commit to that concept that you meant to do that. They'll believe you if they like you.
And that is fantastic advice. Fantastic advice. Also, I want to let you guys know I'm not supposed to be your interviewer, which is why you're not seeing me now. I'm a woman and don't have hair and makeup done. And I'm getting over bronchitis, so if I cough over Michael, please excuse me. Um,
And my apologies to Morgan and to I'm not sure what we had some sort of technical issues going on
Google
with
was
that.
not letting it happen. I sat here for 20 minutes doing the same process over and over again until finally, oh, there we were.
So let's take advantage.
Yes, okay. Which effect that you perform gives you the most pleasure and why?
The most pleasure. Gosh, that's a really difficult question. In fact, I saw that on the list of questions, and I thought I have no idea how I'm going to answer that because it depends on the night, it depends on the room, it depends on where I am, it depends on. Sometimes my favorite thing in the show, the one that I'm most passionate about, is the newest thing in the show, especially if I feel like it's going really well. I'm really excited about the newest thing in my show called The Thought Gun because at a recent guest set that I did last week or a couple weeks ago, I finally feel like I figured it out and the audience understands it the way that I wish for them to. The audience reaction is amazing to the multiplying bottles, and I really love that. So in terms of pleasure to perform, I love it when they connect with me and they understand what the feeling is supposed to be during a trick. I'm also passionate about some of the stuff that I've created. Like I perform my original popped and balloon trick in the show, and that's something that I created myself. So it's nice to be able to perform something that start to finish is original in plot and method, and I can do that, and then it makes you feel good when you have something that's completely original in the show.
Great, thank you. The happy, oh, I'm sorry, glasses. What inspires you outside of magic that you bring into your magic?
Comedy, stand-up, improv comedy, and stand-up comedy are huge inspirations for the writing, for the feel of the show. Late night television is a huge inspiration just for the flow of the way that I want my show to feel to the audience. Um, the style and the music in the show comes from seeing live bands. I really like to see. I try to see a lot of live bands before I go on tour every year, because then I become inspired by the energy.
Anyone with you?
I'm sorry?
Have you thought about performing with one on?
I have, and I haven't found a way to really make it work that well because so much of my magic is about the comedy and about the connection with the audience. And if you have my act going on at the same time as, like, say, a rock band, it's difficult to showcase both at the same time in the spotlight. One of them has to be in the background, and one of them has to be in the forefront, I think. I'd love for something to work like the way that if you've seen Fashion Rocks, the way that something like that works, where you have a band and the
Yeah.
band's being showcased and the fashion's being showcased. But the way that fashion works is that you can look at it and then you can look away, and then you can look at it and you can look away. And you can't do that with magic. You really have to be focused on the magic, and the band becomes ambient. Either that, or I perform something that's 100% visual, and the band takes the forefront. So it's difficult to do. I've tried it a few different times in situations, and I have a few ideas to make it work for the future that I'm working on. So
Great. We'll look forward to that.
yeah.
Do you build or buy your stage props, and which is best, do you think, and why?
Uh, for simple things, building them is fine as long as they hold up. Most of my stage props are somewhat simplistic, and so I can build them myself. I think when you get into something complicated, I think buying them, you have to consider the fact that you're purchasing it from a person who has done this exact thing a lot of times, and they've already worked out all those kinks. They've worked out all the problems with it that you might have if you built it yourself. The case for building something yourself is if you need something to be very specialized and customized toward your use that the pre-built prop doesn't offer. So usually someone who pre-builds something, if the only change is that you need it to aesthetically match the look of your set, that could be done with a paint job and can happen by the builder. If it needs to do something completely different or work in a completely different way, and you can't have that illusion builder do it for you, then I think if you have the skills, there's nothing wrong with building your own stuff, as long as you've considered everything. There are a lot of things to consider with building props, and in my case, I've built things. I built something for the show. The first time I did the Thought Gun, I took it on tour last fall, and it didn't last 6 weeks before it just completely fell apart because it wasn't made to tour. It wasn't sturdy. And with the TSA going through all my stuff, it just basically got ruined.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry to hear that.
That's okay. I'm working on ideas to make it a little bit more travel friendly. So
Who
failure is
inspired?
good.
Yeah, there you go. I used to use the the long shoe, the long things you hang on the back of your closet that had all the places to put your shoes in them, the
Yeah,
plastic bag, and I would roll things up in socks and put them in those shoe things, and then roll that up and carry it on.
yeah. I'm really passionate about finding ways to make my travel more efficient. That part of the job is really fun for me. So my main showcase is a it's a road case that's been custom made for my show by Cabbage Cases, which is they make travel like flight cases, ATA cases here in my hometown in Columbus, Ohio. They've made cases for a lot of famous magicians, but we're on the third or fourth version of this particular case, and my road case actually converts to my stand-up case that I work out of on stage. The lid comes off, the pull-out handle, the wheels, everything comes off, and it becomes. I put signage on the front of it that's it's all Velcro. So I figured out the way to travel most efficiently. When I was a teenager, I worked in Stephen Klein's magic shop that he used to have available. And hold on just a second. Let me shut my door from my
And I
barking
actually
dogs.
thought that would happen to me, not you.
Dude, your dogs. Hold on just a second.
Sure. This Q&A is a comedy in itself, is it not? I have a little one with a louder voice.
All right, sorry about that. Um,
Not a problem.
so what I was going to say was
Are you there?
When I was a teenager, I worked in a magic shop with a guy, Stephen Klein is his name, and he taught me a really valuable lesson about traveling with gear, and that is pack enough stuff to do a show in your carry-on. And the reason for that is there are going to be times when you travel a lot, there are going to be times when your luggage doesn't show up at the baggage carousel, and you still need to be able to go on stage and do a show. And so I pack at least 45 minutes of my hour show in my carry-on. A couple things need to change to do the show, and it happens a few times a year where I show up and my checked baggage does not. And so I've had to do a show out of my carry-on. It happened when I went to Tokyo last year. The first two shows I did on the tour, I did out of my carry-on. So, yeah, that's one consideration. The other consideration is packing so that you're taking care of your props.
Thank you. Who inspired you in your early career?
David Letterman is a huge inspiration. I like that David Letterman can be really funny without trying to be funny. You just laugh at him for being who he is. And that was a lesson that I think I got that right away. Like, I really like this guy. I don't know why, but I could just sit and listen to him and laugh at him without him telling jokes. The other, Bill Murray, huge inspiration. In terms of magic, David Copperfield, obviously, for me growing up in the 80s and 90s, Copperfield was and is king of the illusion world. And he was the only magician on TV for a long time for me. I remember watching Doug Henning on television, but man, I think everyone who grew up in the time that I grew up in with magic tried to be Copperfield, right? I mean, everyone had lines and jokes that he used for the first time on TV, and now are stock in a lot of magicians' shows, sadly, and that continued until David Blaine, really.
Yeah, that's very true. Before, the ones I remember, I'm much older than you, are Doug Henning and the Pendragons were the big illusionists of my era.
Sure, sure. And I remember
Now,
watching the Pendragons on World's Greatest Magic. Was the first time I saw them.
Yeah.
And those World's Greatest Magic shows were, for someone my age, that's some of our first. Those were some of our first introductions to a lot of magicians that otherwise we hadn't seen on TV yet. You know, that was the first time I saw Williamson and Mac King and the Pendragons and a lot of these magicians, Max Maven.
Yes, they were fantastic.
Yeah.
That was an era then. Now, we talked a little bit about the fact that you do use music in your show, but how do you choose and organize what to use with what effect?
Okay, so for the music in my show, I'm doing a show that I primarily perform on the college circuit. So I want music to be age appropriate. I have to consider the audience. And when I perform for different audiences, the music is one of the first things that I change in the show. So I can't use pop music or hip-hop music in a show for a cruise ship to the same extent. I can still use it if it's on the top 40 charts. But there's hip-hop music that I use in my show that's just not very commercial. I like it because of the way it sounds, and I like that it's going to connect with a really young audience. So half of it comes from music that I think the audience will like. Some of it is music that I think fits a piece perfectly, or I'll hear something on the radio and say, I really like the feeling of that key change, and I want to find a way to work that into the show at this one point.
So do you work
and I'll make notes.
To the music?
No, the effect is usually there first. I mean, there's one instance, and in fact, it's my balloon trick. The music came first. I had a bag of balloons, and a song came on, and the song inspired me for some reason that at this one spot in the music, something big should restore, and it should be visual. And the balloon thing came from that, just because I happened to have him sitting next to me. So, and you can see the balloon trick. You can see a video of that. It's called theballoontrick.com. If you go to theballoontrick.com, you can see it. But
would you have an admin put up that link, please, for me?
Sure.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I can just put it on here. There it is.
Okay.
That didn't link. Hold on. Anyway, so in that case, the music came first, but usually the trick's there first, and I know how I can make a trick better by hearing a particular piece of music. I guess it's there. It is. It's called repair. That's the trick. Uh, so you also have to be careful about what songs you're choosing. Using foul language in a song is always going to be offensive to a mixed audience, like a family audience. You always have to be careful about age appropriateness of the music. When Blurred Lines was the #1 single for 12 or 14 weeks in a row last summer, I had it in the show because it made people really excited. So the song played as I was coming on stage. It was my walk-on music, and then there's a bumper after the first big climax / joke of the show. There's a bumper hit of whatever music was my walk-on music, and it was that song again, and then it's also my walk-off music. And usually that's how I structure the most exciting song in the show, and that song changes a lot based on whatever my exciting song is at the time. It'll be like my walk-on, it'll be used as a bumper after the first bit, and then it's an hour later, it's my walk-off music, and I use different parts of the song and I edit them so I have the right spot. So you're not hearing the exact same edit 3 times in a row. And it was Blurred Lines, and I got a message from an audience member who thought that that song was inappropriate and promoted rape culture, which was a big thing in the news, it is, I shouldn't say was, but I had never considered the social context of that song in using it in a show. I just knew that it was a #1 song on the charts. People loved it. It got the audience really excited.
For a while before that whole story about it even came out.
That's right, and Robin Thicke, who did the song, has claimed that that's not what the song is about. And frankly, I don't care what the song's about. My biggest thing, if it's offensive to people, I'm not going to use it in the show. But it had been the #1 song on the charts for 12 weeks at this point, and I was using it because it made audience members really excited, and you could see that. When the song would start, people would just start dancing. And that was exactly the feeling that I want when I'm going on stage, is a lot of excitement. So it's something that I hadn't considered, and I think about a little bit more because I definitely don't want to offend anyone with the music in the show. And the way that I organize it is iTunes. I use iTunes, and then I've used a couple different sound systems to control my music wirelessly on stage. I still like Virtual Sound Man. Virtual Sound Man's not available anymore, of course, but I have 2 units with a backup ready to go, and there are a few other really good ones out there. Q Command is a good one. Carrie Pollock's got one. Media Star, I believe, is what it's called. There are a lot of different wireless music players out there where you can control your music from stage, and if you can organize it into a playlist, like right before the show, and then play it, then it's perfect, because that way I can change the song if I need to, or I can take a song out if I'm not doing a bit.
Right. Right. Okay. Next question on the list is, how important is it, do you think, for performers or magicians to do charity events?
I think it's a good thing. Magic is
a very talked about subject in the forums, because you'll get a 50-50 crowd that'll say, I don't do anything for free, to ones that do all kinds of hospital events.
Here's my advice about that. Pick a charity and stick with that charity. Set some guidelines around your charity. Say, this is my charity. I work with the animal shelter, and I'm going to do one event every year for free for that animal shelter. Then when the American Cancer Society calls you, you can tell them, I'm sorry, I work with the animal shelter, that's my charity. I've heard people say nasty things when people ask for free shows. They'll say things like, one of the comebacks I always hear is, well, are you paying the caterer? Of course they are. But that's a nasty way to frame it. listen, we know that sometimes our art isn't appreciated monetarily, and people don't realize that they have to pay us. They think, oh, well, you can just come and do a show, right? And it's free, right? And no, you shouldn't be going out and doing every charity for free, because what we do is very valuable. And the fact of the matter is, they are paying other people to be there who, who won't do that service or provide that product without money. But I think charity is a good thing. So pick your charity, work with that charity, and decide what you're going to do. And if you've got it predetermined, then it's a lot easier to say no to things. And I hate to say no to work, but sometimes you have to just realize the value in what you do. I was just asked to do a charity by a good friend of mine and someone who I really enjoy working with. And the reason that I turned that one particular down, the charity was even something that I care deeply about because of a family member's involvement. And I turned it down because of the schedule. It was in a really, really busy time for me, and I just didn't feel like it was fair to go out and do a show without pay, as important as it may be, during that particular week. So if that maybe had happened,
your time properly. It is a person for you.
Yeah, that's right. We have to be responsible. If this is a business for us, we have to be responsible as a business person just as much as you do as a performer. And you have to think about there's a responsibility you have to yourself to not take every free show for the exposure, because that's always the line they use. It's for exposure, and
yes,
more often than not, it's not very good exposure. Some of these events, sometimes they are. I've taken charity events or charity work before just because I thought it would be a really fun time and a really good time or a really good cause. You have to be careful about that, because if you do it for one person, the other people are going to find out and start asking you to work for free for them as well. So
exactly. That was one of the main arguments in the forums was, well, if you do one charity event, then you're going to feel, they're going to say, well, you did that one, why won't you do ours?
sure.
Because some of these, and God rest their souls, that's their job, and they're doing it with passion. But some people come on too strong when it comes to getting donations for their charities.
Yeah,
and
I understand that. And they're saying, hey, so-and-so's doing this for free. So-and-so's doing this for free. Are you better than them? Why do you think you're better than these other people that are doing that for free?
And for them to use that type of expression to you any more than it is for you to use it to them.
That's right. And that's why I think it's a good idea to set those parameters for yourself up front. And it's good to say, okay, here's the charities that I work for, or here's the charities that I like to work with, and here's how much charity work I'm going to do on any given year. Because that way you can use that. You can say, well, I'm sorry, I love to give to the American Cancer Society, but I usually do one show a year for the American Cancer Society that I donate, and I've already done that, so I've already been happy to help the American Cancer Society in doing X and Y show last month or whenever it was. Yeah. Ultimately, it's up to you, but keep in mind also that by doing, and this is the other argument against this, by doing a free show, are you taking away work from someone who would have been paid for that free show? That's another thing to consider.
That is something to consider, as well as taking lower rates than what is standard for your area. Are you undercutting your fellow musician?
Yeah, and that happens everywhere. Sadly, it happens in every market. It's going to happen, but the way around that is that you just let the customer know that you get what you pay for.
Exactly, because generally somebody that will sink to that level has not got a good character, and so they're not in it for the art itself, and their show is not going to be as good as somebody that is in it for the art.
That's part of it, Laura, but the other part is that sometimes when people are first starting out, you can't command the fee that you do, and sometimes it doesn't have as much to do with character as it does experience. We've all been there where, I was there at one point doing shows for folks and charging, $300 or $400 for a show that a local professional might do for $2,300, when I was a teenager or whatever. And you can't really fault people for that because everyone has to start somewhere. But it's important for the buyer to know that this act is cheaper because it is less experienced. I think that's the case.
That makes much sense to me. Have you ever performed any magic other than stage magic?
Absolutely. When I was a kid, I wanted to be an escape artist, and I did a lot of that when I was gosh, probably 12 and 13. That was a huge phase. I didn't stick with that at all. Currently, I do a lot of close-up as as a cocktail hour, reception hour at like a corporate event. I also do a lot of close-up around the campuses in which I perform. So if I go to the school and I'm performing, I'll go around and do close-up magic and talk to people. I worked in restaurants for years before entering any sort of
Those are the trenches.
colleges, yeah. And I did that for 4 nights a week for 2 or 3 years straight. And that is a really great way to cut your teeth and to get good in dealing with people and to get good at just a few tricks if you want to do those same tricks over and over and over. And you really learn your timing using doing restaurant magic.
And
it's
you
also
overcome a lot of anxieties that you normally, because
that's
you're
that's
forced to.
that's true. And that extends past magic performance. If you can go up to a group of people that you've never met before and start talking to them to do a magic trick, that's useful in your life. That's useful outside of magic as well. And vice versa. If you're really good at approaching people, that's going to help you approach a table in restaurant. I think the best close-up magic mimics a social interaction. I've always said that. I think that the way that I'm performing for you doing a close-up trick should feel like you and I are hanging out and we're friends. And oh, by the way, here's something really amazing. I think that's the best way to approach close-up magic. So there's not a fourth wall. It's just very organic and a natural conversation between two people. So yeah, I've done a few different types, and I've dabbled in illusions, as I said earlier, but illusions were never a very successful thing for me.
Okay. What has been the hardest part of all of the constant touring that you do?
Um, my body goes through a pretty big change between when I'm home. Like right now, this is my time off. So I've got shows that are here in town this month, but this is what I call my mental health month, because come halfway through next month and then in August, I'm on the road constantly, and I spend about 200 to 250 days a year on the road. So the sleep schedule is very difficult. I try to take the first flight from one city to the next, the 6 a.m. flight, because that offers me forgiveness. If there are flight delays or flight troubles, I can still maybe make the second flight and still not miss the show. And then sometimes I'm going on stage at 10 or 11 p.m. at night, which means I'm off stage. If I go on at 11, I'm off the stage at 12. I'm packed up at 1, and I'm back to the hotel by 1:30. If I've got a 6 a.m. flight and the airport's half an hour away, I'm only getting a couple hours of sleep that night, and I'm sleeping on the plane. So the sleep schedule and the unhealthiness to your body is the biggest challenge, and I try to be as healthy as I can and find fresh food here and there, but it's really difficult. It's also hard to be away from family for a long time. You have to just learn to communicate via phone and text message and FaceTime or whatever you can do, to keep in touch, and that makes it difficult.
What is the most expensive stage prop that you've invested in?
I'd say probably that mismade lady illusion. It was a few $1,000, but in my current show, gosh, I don't think I have any props that I use on stage that are worth more than like, I don't know, $700-800. I don't think that's very important, honestly. I don't think spending money on a show is all that important. I had my entire show stolen last October,
Wow.
October 4th of last year. My entire show was stolen out of my car. Like my props were stolen. And we're talking about the carry-on bag, the one that has most of the important stuff. I had my Pavel's walking knot. As you know, Pavel passed away. Those are very difficult to get now. I had fakini balls.
I
thinking he
heard
passed
for
away. And I had all these, these one-of-a-kind things that they weren't impossible to replace, but really difficult to replace. Take him, and I had a show the next day in New York.
Oh my
So
God.
I
That's
went
when you become a mentalist and go to Staples.
That's right. And what I did was I went to Staples, I went to Walmart, and I basically put a show together that I performed on stage in New York the very next day, and standing ovation. They had no idea that that wasn't my normal show, and it was a really nice lesson for me because it showed me that it's not about the props or how much you spend on them. It's really about the performance and being confident in selling the idea of and knowing exactly what you're trying to sell to them. A lot of the plots in the show stayed the same. Where something is purported to be a failure, 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 and then amazement that amazes us both. And if you know what your character is, you know what the show is, it doesn't really matter what the props are.
Right, right. You hear so often these days with the way that effects are sold to magicians and mentalists. Um, you've got what I call one trick wonders, where they're asking an enormous price for one effect that's going to take you probably 60 seconds, including presentation, to perform. And then you've got the people that put out an entire book uh, of effects for the same price. So you have to be sharp at what you're getting um, yourself.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Uh, you can go overboard and spend a bunch of money on expensive things when just the simplest and the most inexpensive ones will wow the crowd the most.
I can guarantee you that there, in one of these books, there is something that I've never considered putting in the show, but would be absolutely fantastic in my show. And I love that idea because there's a lot of discovery there, right? I mean,
Yeah, there's a lot of options to
I,
change.
if so and so puts out a new trick, so and so magic company puts out a new trick, and then they send out an email. This is the most amazing trick that you'll ever see, and you're going to pay 15, 20 bucks for that trick. That's cool. But I also know that everyone else got that email too. They might all be doing that exact same trick in the show. I would rather go into my magic library here and find something that was written forever ago that might be a simpler method. And just because it takes a little bit more work, it makes it a little bit more special. And it also, shoot, go back to Tarbell. Look in Tarbell. There's a million ideas in Tarbell that are great for your show.
I've always said that Tarbell was one of the only, if you got all volumes, that was one of the only things you would ever need.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see. We've answered that one with
And,
another.
and and on that note, Laura, while we were talking about that,
Sure.
I mean, look, the simple. I still am going back to the very first books that I read, and going back and finding new things. It's not just Tarbell. It's not just go back to the Bobo coin book and this stuff. Shoot, Amateur Magician's Handbook by Henry Hay was like my very first magic book that I read, and every once in a while I still go back in there and find a cool idea of something that if I can't do it close up, I can adapt it to a stand-up routine. There's a card trick in here where I adapted the idea for a video that I did, and it has nothing to do with cards. So
Yeah, there's a lot of inspiration. Sometimes you think you've gone through those books 100 times, but I've heard many a performer talk about, well, I haven't picked up that book in about a year, even though I've gone through it 100 times, and still find something different than I've ever seen before.
yeah, it happens all the time.
It's all
That's
a
great.
matter of perspective.
That's right. Or sometimes you'll see something that'll. If everyone knows Dan Harlan, he's an expert at this, at finding like an old idea and then making it amazing. Something from like Tarbell or something like that. So
Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
I'll still be doing this. Hopefully, I'll have learned some things that I don't know now, I look back 5 years ago. This sounds like the Matthew McConaughey Grammy or the Oscar speech or whatever. I look back at the Michael Kent from 10 years ago, and at the time I thought I was doing really good work, and I may have been, but now I look back and I'm like, man, what was I thinking with that? What was I thinking by doing this? That's so much better now. And I hope that in 10 years from now, I'm able to look at the show that I'm doing now and think, oh, why was I doing it that way? I always want to improve what I'm doing in terms of the content of the show. Now, in terms of where I'm performing, I have no idea. I'm going to go where people want me. So the college market right now has been really good to me. I'm doing a lot of colleges, and they like the show there. So I have a few years left doing that, and then at a certain point, maybe either I'll get sick of the college market, or they'll get sick of me. I don't know if and when that'll happen. But there'll always be somewhere to do my show.
Stands by it.
What's that?
Paul Draper still stands by it, the college tour.
Absolutely. There are guys who've been doing the college market for 25 years, you know?
Yes, forever. There's just a never-ending renewal of audiences, you know.
That's true, but that's also it's also a very difficult thing about college market is that there isn't the long-standing relationships like there are with, say, corporate shows, where you get booked by the same guy for, Dick Stoner out of Fort Wayne, Indiana. He's got trade show clients that have hired him for 40 years in a row. I think that's amazing. That's awesome. And for a lot of that time, he's probably working with some of the same people that are hiring him. That just doesn't happen in the college market. You might get booked 3 or 4 years by the same person in a row, and then that person goes away, and you have to reestablish a relationship. You most of the time will just completely lose that client altogether, and that's a normal thing. You can't get upset about it because that's just how the market works.
Okay. What advice would you give someone dealing with anxiety on stage or performance anxiety?
That's great. Now you're talking about two things there, because anxiety, you can have anxiety on stage that only comes from performance anxiety, and then you have, we'll call that like stage fright, and then there's a separate issue of like anxiety disorder, which is something I'm very familiar with, and I didn't get until I started touring, but I suffer from anxiety, and I don't want to talk really too much about it because it's more of a personal issue, but you have to know what your triggers are and how to relieve that. I use meditation if I'm having really extreme anxiety, and that brings me back. But I think what you're talking about is maybe more stage fright.
Yes, yes. I think the wording here is anxiety, but I would assume that the writer generally meant stage fright.
Well, let's talk about it in terms of maybe your stage fright creates an anxiety type situation on stage, which I can see happening. And I had a speech coach in college that his name was Dr. Love, and Dr. Love talked about stage fright like the head on a beer. So for those of you who are younger and or don't drink beer, that's the foam part on the top of the beer. And the more you fill the glass with beer, the less room there is for head on the beer. Now we're not talking about the people out there who say that that's an important part of the beer and it's supposed to be there and all that. The head on the beer, I'm going to try to get this analogy right. The head on the beer is all the extra thoughts in your head. The things like, do they like the way I'm dressed? Are they listening to me? Do they like me? Are they paying attention to me? Am I standing up straight? Am I, all these little extra little things. The rest of the glass, the actual beer, that's your content. Your head should be filled with your message and everything that's happening presently with you and your show and what you're trying to get across. So to be fully present in your magic, you're filling all of your head with the beer, with the actual content. And if you do that, there's no room for the extra stuff. There's no room for the stage fright and the worrying about things, because it's the extraneous thoughts that we have, the things that aren't as important, that create stage fright. So if you're really present in what you're doing, and you're really passionate and committed to what you're doing, then it'll come across that way. And it doesn't matter who you're performing for, how many of them there are, they're going to be there with you. So pretending like the audience is your friend and feeling like they're your friend is an important thing in that.
I had an early on problem when I was younger about getting the shape and trying to perform. And I wasn't nervous uh, in emotionally
Yeah.
nervous or afraid of the crowd, but for some reason I would physically react
Hmm.
on stage with very tremory hands, very
Yeah,
shaky
and
hands.
it's a subconscious thing with that, and probably I'm not. Don't let me put words in your mouth, but I would assume that the more you notice it, the worse it gets in a situation like
Absolutely.
that. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, and so that's another thing where like you noticing your shaking hands is one of those extraneous thoughts. That's the head on the beer, right? So once you start thinking about it, that's in your head and that shouldn't be in your head. Um, so being able to put yourself in a mindset where you're completely comfortable is difficult to do, especially if you're not naturally good in front of people. But I can tell you from experience, and I can tell you from hearing other people's testimony, it goes away with experience. It goes away by doing it a lot. The more you're on stage, the the more comfortable you'll be. I still go through this when I put a new bit on stage. If there's a little thing in my head that I'm not 100% confident in a new bit, I start to get nervous about it, and that's because I'm worrying about it for no good reason. If it doesn't go well, what's the worst that can happen? They're not going to like that one small bit of the show or something. So,
What was the most difficult effect for you to learn and master that you're the best at now? What did you struggle the most with learning that you're so good at right now?
hmm,
That one was for me.
that's a good question, Laura.
Either one of
Say
them.
it, say it again now.
What one effect did you struggle with or move did you struggle with so much to get down pat? And now that you've got it, you're excellent at it.
Okay. I have everything that comes to my mind with that question are close up moves and close up effects. Things like a classic palm. I can remember thinking that a classic palm was impossible and that I just didn't have the right hands for it. And now I don't even think about it. I don't even think about a classic palm, and I don't feel like my hand looks weird anymore. I don't have one of these anymore when I do it. Um, that's an example.
Use that as an excuse anymore, the hand size. Is that what you're saying? I
Yeah, I mean,
get frustrated. It's so
I've got,
bad.
yeah, and I've seen people with tiny little hands palm coins amazingly, which gives, so no one has that excuse. It's really just a matter of doing it a lot and finding out exactly how to use your muscles and developing those right muscles. Um, I personally really suck at a pinky count with cards. I'm really awful at it, but I sit with it, and I have been doing this for months. I sit in the car while I'm driving and do nothing but just try to pinky count. But I can remember having done that same thing with like a thumb count, and now that's not a problem to thumb count, a couple cards or three cards or whatever. So, the moral of the story here is that I don't have the idea that I just with any sort of move, I don't have this idea that I just am not going to be able to do it and that I can't do it. The way that I think about it is that I just haven't done it enough yet, and I think that's probably an important lesson. I don't know. Um, it comes from
I've
I
just
play.
started adding cards to my act, and it's killing me. And I keep thinking, maybe I'm just not a card person, and I'll put them down and I'll walk away, and then I'll get frustrated at walking away and go back and
Yeah,
pick them up, and
and that's
it's
good enough motivation right there to keep going. Is frustration that you gave up. So I don't believe in the whole maybe I'm just not a card person type of thing, but maybe I'm delusional. Like I have this weird feeling like if I wanted to learn how to play the guitar, I could I could start today and then eventually I'll be able to play the guitar. I don't know. Like I
true.
said, maybe that's a delusional thing, but um, I
Very
think that if you do something long enough and if you have proper instruction on it and you're doing, you're going along learning the right way, then you can do it because especially with magic, there are so many great examples of people that have overcome disabilities and still been able to do magic.
absolutely.
That it's hard to have an excuse.
It is. How hard was it to become Entertainer of the Year? How how difficult was that process?
Well, it took. I was nominated 3 years in a row for this award, and the way that you're nominated is that people in your field nominate you, and then they just do voting through the readers of Campus Activities magazine, and so you can't go in there with like a Yahoo address and all that. You have to pretty much be like an EDU or a private domain account to vote for this. Um, and I got asked people to the point where I got sick of asking people and felt like I was bothering them to go and vote. And the first year, I lost to an amazing musician, Natalie Stovall, who's now blowing up on the country market. Um, and she's awesome. Her and I are friends. And then the year after that, I lost to an improv troupe, or excuse me, an improv troupe, Mission Improbable, out of Chicago, who's great. It's like 5 guys who are really, really funny.
So it's a
And so
broad category in general.
it's basically the way that this magazine operates these awards is that there are a ton of different categories that are specific, like best male entertainer, best vocalist, best comedian, all these things. And then they have Entertainer of the Year, which covers all of the entertainers who are active in the campus activities market. And after 3 years of being nominated, I finally won, and so I'm super grateful. And I'm very fortunate. The people that I was up against this year were some really great entertainers, and every year really they were really great entertainers that I'm usually nominated against. So yeah.
Here's a question for you. Actually, how I stumbled upon your magic was 3 years ago when I kept getting your event bites for vote for me all the time. This guy is driving me nuts. And
Yeah.
I found your magic, and I thought it was the bomb. And I thought, well, no wonder he's even nominated. So how important do you think
Well,
social networking is in magic?
well, it's hugely important. I just did a talk at Magi Fest in Columbus about this. Specifically, my talk was about Twitter and how you can use Twitter to not only leverage and interact with your existing fan base, but to let people see your magic that have not been able to see it before. And that only works through viral content. And by viral content, I don't mean a YouTube video that gets 6 million views in a day. That's amazing, and of course that's going to work, but you can't plan something like that.
Right.
I mean, you have a tweet that you tweet that is just a joke about something that's going on TV, and you use a hashtag so that other people that are writing about that one thing on television are also writing about that, and they're also searching via that hashtag. And if you have, I'm sorry, say it again.
I said hashtags are awesome.
Yeah, it's the way to organize your content. So, but it's also a way for people to see you that wouldn't see you otherwise. So, in my example, then, a lot of people then can see you, especially if you write something that's really entertaining or funny, and it gets retweeted. So, as an example, during the Super Bowl blackout, which happened over 2 years ago, I wrote a funny tweet about the Super Bowl blackout, and I hashtagged it with the Super Bowl hashtag, whatever that was that year. 48, I think it was, Super Bowl 48. And it got retweeted hundreds and hundreds of times, this one tweet. And as a result, I gained 60-some followers on Twitter. And what had happened was these people saw the one funny tweet that had been retweeted by their friend. They weren't following me, but they saw that I showed up in their timeline, and they clicked it, and they said, okay, who's Michael Kent? Do I want to follow him? Are all his tweets funny? And they look through and they see other jokes, and they see other content. Maybe there's a magic video, and they think, oh, that's cool, I'll follow him. Now I have a new person that's following me who's exposed to my magic or to your message or to whoever your entertainment might be. They can go on there, and they're one click away from your videos now. And you can build a fan base that way.
I use all the Q&As, and when somebody like you retweets the Q&A, it has the same rolling effect throughout the magic community, which in turn, all of a sudden I've got one retweet from you and 30 extra magicians following FullCircle Magic because of the rolling effect.
Well, that's great. That's great to hear. And also, I apologize for all of the bugging you about voting.
Oh, no, 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 not at all. It actually, I mean, it made me look at you, and you weren't really. I didn't mean it annoying to that sense.
Well, we had to have been friends first for me to send that, right? I mean,
I know.
I didn't send that to
We
strangers.
became friends though because of that.
Okay.
You annoyed me into friendship.
That's everyone I know, Laura. That's everyone I
I was waiting for that.
know.
How do you look, or who do you look up to during the that's in the current magic community now? What performers?
Oh man, gosh, I have a lot probably that I can look up to. I think David Blaine is awesome. His last Magic special, I told everyone to go and watch it, because I thought he did a great job of mixing the idea of turning around on the spectators with keeping the magic intact. You know, he was doing classic magic plots like Triumph and stuff, but he was doing it in his David Blaine way, which was cool. The Carbonaro Effect. Go watch Michael Carbonaro on what network?
True TV?
I apologize. Yes, True TV.
I have yet to see that.
Oh, you'll love it. It's awesome. It's basically he turned the sketch that he used to do on Leno into his own show, where he's doing magic in a very organic way to prank people in real life situations. It's really cool. Justin Willman is doing great things using magic to put him into television and hosting and things.
Not just cupcakes anymore, huh?
What's that?
Not just cupcakes.
He's not just cupcakes anymore. He's actually got a really quality, really good magic show. Yeah, and God, what Derek Delgadio and Helder Guimaraes did with their show is awesome. There's just a really great culture of magic everywhere, but the culture of magic in Hollywood right now is really great too. And I think what the people are doing at the castle is, at least like this young group of magicians that are all involved, is really inspiring. And I think that a lot of them are going to keep going on to do big things. So.
Terrific.
I feel like I'm leaving people out that I really look up to and admire, so I apologize for that.
That's always a difficult question too.
It is, yeah.
That's like if you could spend one day with one past magician, who would it be and why? And it's so hard to choose. I've asked that in the forums before, and I don't think I've ever gotten somebody just name one person.
Oh, I'm inspired by so many magicians right now for different reasons, and some of them are really good friends of mine, and I hate naming names because then person was like, well, what about me? And I don't know. It's hard.
That happened to me with an admin, actually. I'm out of a tag, and he said, I'm not an admin anymore. I felt terrible. What is your next goal to achieve in the list of career musts? Now that you've got Entertainer of the Year, what's the next must that you have?
Career musts. I must retire at some age, so I need to make sure that I'm handling my money responsibly. Let me just make a statement about that. What we do is show business, and the business is as important, if not more important, than the show. So when you guys go out and start making money with your magic, it's not about what you make, it's about what you keep. So put money away. When you're self-employed, you don't have your employer matching a 401k for you. You don't have an employer setting up all your benefits and insurance. So it's really important to be fiscally responsible.
Save your tax time. That will knock you on your ear if you are not prepared for it.
Yeah, and I hire someone now I think it's worth the money to just hire someone to do my taxes. It's just gotten a little bit too complicated for me and what I'm doing. And someone else looking at that is...
I get down and I would charge myself like a FICA tax and a Social Security tax, and I would put that much in the bank every show that I had, and then that way I always had that in savings. It accrued, and I would have that come the time it was meant for that big chunk to come out.
Yeah, and this is all very boring for the hobbyists who aren't.
Yes, it is.
But still, I just had to say that. And but okay, so you asked about the next career goal.
The next career goal.
I really want to do more with the armed forces. I've done 2 tours performing for the troops now, and I really want to do another big one. So that's sort of a goal of mine. I also, this fall will be finally this thought going routine that's been in and out of the show. I finally got it figured out, so it goes right in the show and rotates some of the old material out. So it's important for me to not become stagnant with material.
Yes. Yes. Even in my semi-retired functioning here, I am constantly eager to learn new effects, even if
Yeah.
I'm just going to be showing them to my neighbor down the street, or, I mean, once it's in your blood, it's in your blood,
Yeah.
so to speak. And so much new comes out, and it's fun to do that. But like I said, you don't need it, but it's fun.
And that's, I think, the only thing that's kept me from really getting burned out from magic after making it my career was that there's an aspect of this profession that's still a hobby to me, and that is the new, latest, coolest magic trick that I can show my friends that might not ever have any intersection with my career. That newest, greatest thing. Here's an example. I don't know if you can see it up here somewhere. It's the magic switchboard. Have you seen this? It's awesome. 4 different color lights, 4 switches, and no matter where you put the lights, the switches still control the lights. I love it, and I bought it because I bought it because I was performing for a group of electrical engineers from all around the world, and so after the show, I brought that thing out and showed it to them, and it was just a really nice combination of effect and audience. I still have engineers that talk to me about that want to know how it works and all that. So I bought it for that. I'll never perform it in my show, but it's really fun to show friends, and it's the part of it that I still get passionate about because it's still the hobby part of it. Keeps it fresh for me.
There you go. If you could perform magic, or if you couldn't perform magic, what other career would you choose?
I used to work in marketing.
Because I couldn't imagine doing anything different.
Oh, I can. I can.
I couldn't. It never.
I had another career before this. I worked in marketing. I was a marketing director. And I still do that as consultant work on the side. So I'm getting a little bit of an echo here, Laura. I'm not sure if you're getting that as well.
No, you're coming through loud and clear to me.
All right. I'll just try to ignore it and keep going. So I worked as a marketing director before this. I could always go back to that. It will never be as fun as this is. Every day is different in my life, which I absolutely love. I also would love to go into speaking, as a speaker. Those are the main things I think I could do. I could do PR and speaking and that type of stuff. But I
think that if that was the one thing that I would change, it would be something where I would do public speaking of some sort. I'd probably become a really good preacher or something.
Yeah, any way that I could be creative as well.
Right.
Could be a sort of a I don't know.
Okay, we've got a couple more questions left, and then we'll let you go eat dinner.
You're fine.
For so long.
I'm sorry we got started late.
Well, it was technical issues.
Sure.
Poor Morgan. I feel for the guy. It was his first time interviewing, and he thought, "What am I doing wrong? I keep doing everything we went over." And he was doing all the right steps because I tried it. What was the one effect? Well, we kind of answered that one. So looking back, is there any other path that you would have taken to get to where you are now than the one that you did?
Is there any other path I can take? Okay, so let's talk about in the college market right now. There are more magicians than there have ever been, and there are a lot of magicians that get into the college market before they probably should. And I think that it's a good idea to have legs under your feet before you get going in any market. So before you start doing cruise ships, have a lot of shows under your belt. Private shows, smaller shows. One thing I talked about with Morgan was theme parks. A lot of magicians do theme parks, and that way you get really good at a show because you're doing it a lot and repetitively. And you need that experience before you jump into it. I had a lot of experience before I got into the college market. And now, 10 years later, I have a lot more. So I'm a lot better now than I was then. I look back at it, and I was selling what I thought was a quality show, but it's not like it was if I were to start it now. I'm not sure there's another way I would have gotten into the college market that I feel like would be a good idea.
I see. That you would recommend anyway, huh?
No, that's the big thing is everyone's looking for the shortcut. They want to know how I can start doing college shows today, start doing cruise ships today, corporate shows today. It doesn't exist.
It's a process.
It's always going to be a process, and unfortunately, some people don't want to hear that answer. But the only way to become good at anything is by doing it a lot. And
that's why restaurant magic is so good as a career starter.
It's so good. And
it affords you corporate connections.
It does, and it also just it really lets you develop your own performance character and performance persona. You can start to learn who you are and why you're doing the magic, what this magic could mean to you as your character.
Mm-hmm.
And you can really develop a lot of skill and experience.
I picked up Coca-Cola and I think it was Mountain Dew was the other one. A couple of different drink companies, a couple of different food supply companies as corporate sponsors after having seen me doing restaurant work.
That's awesome.
So
that's a great story. I mean, that's the perfect example.
Perfect
you never
example.
knew who you're going to meet.
I had a restaurant manager that became somebody really big in a grocery chain store in Brookshire's, was in Texas, and I wound up moving on to corporate with him. So you never know how things are going to roll, and if you don't start somewhere, and instead of just trying to jump to the top, you're really missing out on a lot of things, a lot of good experiences that you normally wouldn't have.
Sure. And
to jump from A to Z, and you're missing out on the whole alphabet.
And I can tell you that you're going to make mistakes along the way. And it's better to make those mistakes on a small scale than on a large scale. It's better to make those mistakes before you have a lot of notoriety and people following you.
Yes.
I have heard from a lot of agents who have gotten taped from performers who are not yet ready.
Yes.
And unfortunately, it's difficult to erase that vision out of the agent's mind after they've seen it. So someone sends the video, they're not quite to that level. Next time that person talks to them, they're still thinking about, way back when. You might put a bad taste in someone's mouth before you're ready. And so it's important to already have your act honed.
And let me tell you, corporations talk to each other. They do talk to each other. They do recommend performers between the two of them. They go to conventions. They're as much a network in themselves. These restaurant owners and these corporations and these Fortune 500 companies are as much a network in themselves as we are in our own little magic community.
Yeah, yeah. It happens in every market.
So you can get a bad name at a very high level, and then you've got nowhere to go but down.
Sure. Yeah.
What advice do you let's see, how is this question worded? What advice, performance-wise, do you give someone performance-wise to prepare themselves for a tour?
Oh, to prepare for a tour, performance-wise?
Prepare for his tour, performance-wise.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, it depends on your performance and what your performance is. In my case, when I'm preparing for a tour, I make a list, and here, I did this one the other day. This is for my fall tour. You guys can have a little bit of insight. I sat out on my front porch the other day, and I did this. These are ideas and changes for the fall tour.
Oh.
I go through each part of my show that exists. I write down what it is that I don't like about it, what it is that I can change about it, how I can improve it, and then I go into bits that maybe I want to put into the show, write down what steps I need to take in order to make those happen, and then I do extraneous stuff like wardrobe, merchandise, let's see, extra little things like video, luggage, stuff that needs to be refurbished, cases that need to be polished, every little item. And once I've done that, I create a list of action items that like a checklist. And the next to that adds a timeline to that. So that where doesn't you or probably not too many of our viewers are preparing for tours.
Is the square footage of your stage show pretty much the same in any venue that you're in, or do you raise the parameters as to the venue?
There's a suggested parameter for my stage size, and that's in my rider, the technical rider that gets to the venue beforehand. They either have it or they don't. If they don't, they have to talk to the agent or myself about it, and then we can decide whether or not we can do the show, or we have to change the show to accommodate. If I'm in a theater, chances are the stage is going to be much larger than what I require, and I'll use the space for that.
If there's anything I hated was having my parameters set and then go into a smaller seating but larger stage, and then I looked like I stayed in the middle.
Yeah, I think it's really important to try to use the space as much as you can. One of the things that I can do to make a stage a little bit more filled is fill it with production items like banners with names on them, or I'll put a table out further from the center stage than I normally would. And I'll also use all of the stage physically with my body. Use as much of that stage as possible. Because the alternative is that is the show is feeling very small and isolated in the center. It's like watching one of those cell phone videos where people make them up and down. It drives me crazy.
Yeah. Well, we've got 2 questions left, and I'm going to ask you the last one first and the first one last. From a scale, because of the way they are, on a scale from 1 to infinity, how competitive would you say you are in the magic community?
I don't know. 1 to infinity. 734.
734. That's
I don't know.
That's 3/4 of a way to a 10, I think.
But it's to infinity. So it could be very small. We'll just say, like, I'm competitive as much as any businessman can be. I'm competitive for business reasons. I try not to be competitive for personal reasons. It's not a good idea to compare yourself to people because that hinders creativity.
Yes.
And when you start paying attention to what everyone else is doing, you lose sight of what you should be doing, your personal creative voice. Now, I do keep track of everyone who I'm competing against in my market. I know what they do in their shows, or I try to, and I pay attention to it. Many of them are really good friends of mine, and it's really great to be friends with your competitor because a mutual respect breeds more creativity and more honesty between competitors.
Absolutely. And I think you can share more over a what did you call it? Non-headed beer or headed beer or something like that. You
Yeah,
can share more with somebody in your same competition level
yeah.
than you can with
I
somebody
have,
that
you
you
know,
beat every year like crazy.
some of my best friends that also perform in colleges. We can openly share ideas of stuff that we're working on. I know markets where that would never happen because there's
Right.
not a mutual trust and understanding.
Right.
But there are, and it's not, not completely open between them that I would just want to share these ideas. There's stuff
Right.
on my notepad that I would never show how to make people watching this, but I think there are certain competitors who I'm friends with that I can share open ideas with.
It's nice to have a group like that to bounce ideas off of. Okay, final question. Are you ready? Drum roll.
Okay, do it.
Other than winning your current title, what has been your biggest achievement to date?
I can make this a broader statement. My goal was to make a living doing something that I love, to know that I was passionate,
Nice.
and I've done that. I own my house, nice cars. I'm living a life that I didn't know was possible with magic tricks. And that's a really great thing. It's really cool that people still think magic is cool. Now that said, I think some of my greatest accomplishments have been what I've done for the men and women serving in our own forces, for the Army and for the Navy. They're the most fulfilling shows I do. They're the most appreciative audiences, and many times they're really fun. So I've got a collection of command points that have been given to me by various commanders of different bases, and that's a thing they get to give people when they meet them, to show appreciation. And man, those are some of the most valuable things I own. So
Terrific.
yeah, I hope to do a lot more.
Well, thank you so much for getting through the big mess of technical issues and being with us here.
Stuck around.
And if not, they will come back and view this because
good.
I've got a web page made for you, and I'm going to house the video on there, and I'm going to share it in all the magic communities. Plus, we're going to pull an MP3 off of this for audio for people who like to listen to Q&As like this while they're driving and whatnot.
Sounds good. And if you guys would like to follow me on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, feel free.
Yes.
Those links.
All that is going to be on the web page at the bottom. Your Twitter feed is going to show. All of your links are going to show. So that people will be able to follow you and check you out on your website. And his tweets are really funny, guys. They really are.
And I urge you, if you think of a question that didn't get voted up to the top questions here, I love questions that stump me. You'll find one that I can't answer. Feel free to send it to me. It might be a few days to get back to you.
That's a great idea. That is a great idea. I think that they did a pretty good job of covering just about every aspect of performing in these questions. Yep. So I'd like to know what that question is as well. So if you would share it with us you get that, we would appreciate it.
As long as it's not too personal.
True. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys. Thanks, FullCircle Magic.
You have a good evening.
All right, you too.
Bye-bye.